Hi, this is Brian Kim. I'm going to share with you case number 158 in the best way to do cataract surgery series. This is a patient who is going to have a Vivity, but not a Vivity only, but a Vivity Toric, axis 175. You're going to see how I position toric lenses in my technique. But also this patient wanted a Vivity because he's more of an outdoor person, likes to be active, doesn't really read a whole lot, like sitting at home and reading novels all day, and so he's very active lifestyle, and therefore he chose the Vivity lens. You will see cataract surgery, and at the end, the placement of the Vivity Toric lens. So I'm using a cotton tip to steady the eye, and using a corneal marker to help me center and incise rhexis. I'm having the patient look to the left and making my paracentesis incision first on the right side and then the left side, making sure I'm flat to the iris plane, which creates a nice corneal shelf, which will allow me to achieve a self-sealing incision. This is intracameral lidocaine, and then some intracameral epinephrine, and then some dispersive viscoelastic to coat the corneal endothelium and to flatten the anterior capsule. You can see this patient has a little bit of a Bell's reflex. This is the left eye, and so I'm using the cannula to hold the eye straight. This is a triplanar corneal incision. I make a vertical groove, place the blade into the deep part of the groove, tunnel through the cornea, and then enter. You want to be somewhat parallel when you're tunneling through the cornea, and then you tilt down when you want to enter. And so this is the sharp tip Halti Percar forceps. I'm going to puncture the center. And essentially it's like a cystotome without having to switch to a cystotome separately. And so this is kind of a 2-for-1 technique. So I puncture, and you saw me able to kind of push down on the capsule, which allows me to create the proper radius to set the rhexis. And I start pulling on the capsule to create that tear, and I start to go around circumferentially and making sure I follow the corneal mark that I made previously, so I have a well-centered incised rhexis. You can see I have excellent control, and there's not much radialization forces with this forceps and technique. Burp some viscoelastic out. This is the capsulorhexis hydrodissection technique. I'll place a cannula under the rhexis edge, contra-incisionally, point the tip down, get a nice wave. It's a little bit of a slow wave, and then I'm able to adjust, and then I'm able to get it. Decompress on the left side, sweeping some on the left, and then sweeping on the right. You can see the lens begins to spin. Making sure that the lens is nice and loose, so that's good. Irrigating the surface of the eye, lifting the incision with a chopper, going in with irrigation off to minimize Descemet's trauma, removing the surface epinuclear material here. Before I do that, I notice I'm starting to get some fluid accumulation at the main incision, and that's going to cause quite a bit of conj ballooning. I'm using the chopper to stretch the conj near the incision, create a little bit of a gap so that the fluid does not dissect underneath the conj and start to balloon. Remove the surface epinuclear material, and here we go. This is in half speed. I place the chopper under the rhexis edge contra-incisionally to point the tip vertically, tilt the phaco-tip vertically sub-incisionally, bring the instruments together, hooking the peripheral lens on both sides, bringing the instruments together and crushing the lens in half. That's double chop, turning the chopper flat and sliding it under the rhexis edge, under the right heminucleus, turning it vertically, and then hooking the peripheral lens, pulling it centrally toward the phaco-tip, and then crushing the lens against the phaco-tip. And this is in normal speed, performing the same maneuver, double chop and then cross chop. And you can see by using mechanical forces how efficiently and safely and easily you're able to create 3 pieces within a matter of seconds. So I lift that first quadrant up and start crushing the lens between the instruments, and then using high vacuum and pulses of ultrasonic energy to remove the piece. I'm loosening that second quadrant up, placing the chopper around the lens piece, getting around the peripheral lens, and then crushing the lens into smaller pieces, and then emulsifying the lens pieces. So that's the first 2 quadrants. I'm rotating the second heminucleus in front of me very gently, and I want to push as peripheral as possible, which causes the least torsional force on the zonules. You saw there, it wouldn't turn the one way, so I turned it the other way. Placing the chopper under the rhexis edge, pulling it against the phaco-tip and then crushing it in half, doing the same maneuver under the third quadrant. That piece is now loose. I'm able to crush it between the instruments and then emulsifying the lens pieces. So that's really the most critical step, is being able to place that chopper confidently around the lens piece. I use some vacuum to pull that fragment up, and then while holding it, I get the chopper around it and then crush the lens against the phaco-tip with the chopper, and doing that over and over again, and then emulsifying the lens piece using high vacuum and some bursts of ultrasonic energy. Lifting that last quadrant up with the phaco-tip, and while I'm holding it, I get the chopper around it and then crush the lens against the phaco-tip, doing that again as well, and then emulsifying the lens pieces. By doing it this way, I use less ultrasonic energy and vacuum, again, pulses of it as well. And in my experience, again, clearer corneas post-op day 1, patients are happier, they can see faster, less damage to the corneal endothelial cells. So all of this is good things when you're doing cataract surgery. Using some vacuum to lift that epinucleus up, placing that chopper deep to protect the posterior capsule. So I take the chopper out, push BSS in, take the phaco-tip out, and I go in with the INA handpiece. I always like to start sub-incisionally, but you can see the lens material, the cortical material that's left is rather loose anyways, so it might not cleanly peel from anterior to posterior. And you can see that there's some wispy material that's left. And so I go to polish mode, going after that wispy material into the capsular fornix. I like to go to polish mode because when you're going into the capsular fornix like that, you don't want to apply really high vacuum, because if you do, again, with these machines are so good, if you grab the capsule, the anterior capsule, and pull centrally, you might pull on the bag and then the zonules as well. And so because the machines are so good, just like a really high performance car, you just have to treat everything with respect. I pulse the subincisional capsular fornix with BSS, and then I'm switching and putting in the cohesive viscoelastic to fill the capsular bag. And then I'm going to sweep with the polisher, the capsule sweep, polishing underneath the rhexis edge of any lens epithelial cells, first on the left side and then the right side. And this is the Vivity Toric lens going into the capsular bag. And the axis, again, is going to be at about 175. I mark the patient ahead of time in the holding area, sitting upright, and I mark 3, 6, and 9 with the corneal marker. I go in with irrigation off, activate irrigation, making sure both haptics are off the optic, tilting and getting underneath the optic with the INA handpiece, rotating at 90 degrees, removing all the viscoelastic from within the capsular bag underneath the lens, repositing the optic back down. And then polishing underneath the rhexis edge as well. And again, I'm trying to get to 175, and so I go underneath the lens. There's some fine wispy lens material, go after that, and I'm very carefully pushing against the optic haptic junction and rotating the lens clockwise, making sure that I get it to the 175 axis point. Removing the viscoelastic from the anterior chamber. And again, because I'm inflating the bag completely, you're able to rotate the lens clockwise as well as counterclockwise. So contrary to popular belief, you can rotate a toric lens counterclockwise. You just have to have the bag inflated with the INA. Using active irrigation with the machine is the best way, because you're really able to apply high pressure to inflate that bag, and you can rotate it any direction you want. I would not advise trying to do that without irrigation. It's really a bad idea. So going to low mag, I'm able to use the axis marker to confirm that I'm at 175. Once I know I'm in a good position, I push BSS with the cannula and withdraw the INA handpiece to lock the lens in position, and then I start hydrating my incisions, and I'll check the lens position one last time at the very end with the axis marker. So again, you can see this patient had not really a terribly dense lens, but pretty dense, probably like a 2 to 3 plus dense lens. CDE is 2.88. I performed double chop, cross chop, mechanical fracturing techniques, carefully disassembling the lens. And again, the most important component is being able to position that chopper around the lens equator. And then I'm able to tilt the ficcative vertically subincisionally, stabbing the lens in the subincisional space. By doing it that way, I'm able to immobilize the lens and then bring the forces together to crush the lens in half, and then doing successive cross-chop maneuvers to disassemble the lens into smaller pieces. And by doing it this way, this patient ended up really happy post-op. Day one, was able to see nearly 20/20 at all phases, not only distance, but also intermediate and near, and he was very happy with his result. So I hope this was helpful to you, and I thank you for your attention.